blessing, and any people still speaking will know that they are heathen, and we will make them a source of our prayer in the process. And so, our Heavenly Father, we pause at this time to acknowledge what we know, what you know, and that is that everything we have comes from you. And so for those things we say thank you. We say thank you for this great nation with which you have blessed us. We thank you for the freedom that we enjoy. We thank you for the fellowship and friendships that we have in this organization, and we thank you for this food. And now, Lord, as we've looked over our shoulder and seen the last 18 hours of the information and blessing we've received, and we now look forward to another 6 hours in which we will receive that which you would have us to know to be more effective missionaries and soldiers for you. That is our heart, that is our prayer. In Christ's name, amen. Now, you're not allowed to speak. Nobody's allowed to talk. The person next to you, when he starts to talk, you just put your little finger in front of their mouth and say, no, you don't. No, 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 no. No, no. No, no. See, Carl is speaking. We need to go, no, don't, because here is what we're going to do. I know food. Food makes us talk, but we're going to stop here, and I'm going to introduce the purpose of this meeting. And that is, as you know, at CNP, we do not raise money and we do not ask for money. However, CNP is a consortium of givers. And what we're going to do during this luncheon time is to provide expertise in how you can judge the best place to give your assets and to help those organizations. And to chair our organization, our meeting today is Joan Lindsey, who is the founder and president of Lindsey Communications, which is an organization that helps conservatives, whether they be think tanks or whether they be candidates or those that are presenting our messages to the national media. Prior for that, beginning Lindsey Communications, she was vice president for media communications for the Pepsi-Cola company, and used those skills now to help conservatives, legislative office holders, and candidates, to help them in media interviews and public speaking and the ability to handle even the most challenging media attacks. However, particularly we're going to focus on her position as president of the Lindsey Foundation, which is an organization that is established to do two things: to enhance conservative Christian values in Hollywood, and secondly, to help conservative organizations by funding studios in-house for them to better present their messages to the world. Now, because she is approached as head of the foundation for giving, she has developed a set of skills. And what this purpose of this working luncheon is to learn from her, along with Bill Walton and Chad Connelly, whom she will introduce shortly, to help us educate ourselves and using that which has been entrusted to us to the maximum ability. So, ladies and gentlemen, Joan Lindsey.
I love that they rolled the handicap steps with the handles up for me. Thanks. That's what age will do for you. Bob, thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. Welcome. As Bob has said, this event is extremely unique for CNP. It is the end result of a task force that I chaired over about the last year, and our task was to figure out if CNP needed anything. And one particular need emerged, and it's to do with how organized the left is and a desire we all have to be as organized and effective on the right. To our dismay, the left uses all kinds of resources systematically to undermine our freedoms. They use dollars, they use ideas, they use contacts, anything and everything. It's like a left-leaning freight train to dismantle what we all know and love about our country. So many of you, and we too on Executive Committee, have expressed a need for the conservative movement to be as organized, especially as we approach 2020. You guys have that slide? So, the left, thank you. The left seems to work in lockstep, right? Mrs. Pelosi says it. thinks it, they do it, they say it. They're extremely united, and they don't mind going in lockstep like this. And Hollywood enjoys a very liberal forum. For example, Demi Lovato, the Disney star, so cute, she's a singer. This girl has got 71 million Instagram followers, and she's super liberal. And why? Well, because this week she posted a picture of herself in a two-piece leopard print bathing suit on the island of Bora Bora. So any volunteers in the conservative movement here that would like to do that? Yeah, no. We don't do it that way. Consider their style, but now consider that our style is different. Our style as conservatives, well, we can be organized and we respect the collective movements, of course. But we're all about personal initiatives, and we respect it, and we have brilliant people that know how to take personal initiative and to think of things to do, activities and programs that are different from their style. They are more our own. Faith infuses a lot of what we do as well, and I don't always see that on the left, do you? So our panel today is to bring you some strategies, some information, in order to ignite the strategies of your own. It's not so you can do just what we do, but so we can begin to give you ideas and you can put them into use in your very own way. Joining me today is another entrepreneurial philanthropist, that's what we call ourselves, entrepreneurial philanthropy activist, Bill Walton. Come on up, Bill. Thank you, Bill. So Bill brings an impressive background in the world of finance to CNP. He's our new incoming president. He is the founder and chairman of Rappahannock Ventures. It's a private equity firm. And he's also head of Rush River Entertainment. They produce feature films. He was part of Trump's transition team in the area of economics and is just extremely well-versed in financials. He's a banker. So he brings to his philanthropic life that same point of view of banking to advance the conservative movement. So we'll look forward to hearing your strategies, Bill. I think his will be different from what you'll hear from me about mine. And joining us today, I'm very thrilled to bring on Mr. Chad Connelly, joining us today. Thanks, Chad, for being here. Chad was the first ever national director of faith engagement for the Republican National Committee. He was appointed by Reince Priebus, who, by the way, is being inducted today, I think it's today, this weekend, as an ensign into the Navy, and that's why the Navy decided this weekend was going to be it, so we miss him. But I know Chad has talked to Reince, and actually it's providential that Chad is here. He is going to bring all that knowledge of how the money moves behind the scenes, stuff we don't know, and talk about the PACs, the super PACs, the hard money, the soft money, the dark money. Bill and I give to organizations, not people, but that's not for everybody. So Chad is going to give us that back-of-the-house insight on how that works. Ladies and gentlemen, our membership is a mixture now. May I have that slide? Thank you. Look at us. We, over the last few years, have really brought in business people along with policy activists. Everybody's got a role to play, and our lunch today is to make sure that all of us understand we're equally important in what God has for us to do. And so this panel today, this first ever attempt at it, is to address that fact that we respect we are a mixture, and we're going to have different styles, but to empower you to find your own way and to act in the way that is best suited for you. Now, as Bob has said, we do have a policy. We don't do one-on-one fundraising here. That doesn't change. This panel changes nothing. We don't endorse any particular organization, nor do we fundraise, and that doesn't change. Instead, today, we are offering you an entrepreneurial look at how you might become an activist on your own. Whether you're already a C3 or not, this, we hope, will give you some ideas. Gentlemen, ladies first. Thank you, appreciate that. They're looking at their notes. See, they've got so much to bring you today. Okay, you don't have to do this, but I worked through a foundation. So once we sold our Pepsi business 25 years ago, I started the foundation, which is, of course, a C3, and Lindsey Communications, which is a for-profit. So everything I did for Pepsi, I do through Lindsey Communications, but I bring that on over pro bono through the foundation. I chose the foundation, you may wish to as well, because I like the structure. It organizes my giving like a business. I am required to provide reporting. So now when I work with the C3, it's like a business to business, and I like that structure and that credibility to it. We're not particularly large. We are a family funded. We don't take any outside donations. So for the first 15 years of this, it was just me, because I'm a media strategist, and the last 10 years I've been joined by my daughter. She's also a seasoned media strategist. The reason that it is good that we have the two of us as media strategists running the foundation, as well as Lindsey Communications, is that the foundation has one focus only, and that is the United States media. Do you think they're a problem? They are a massive problem, but they're people. So we always pay attention to the fact that they are hurting people. They're trying to do the best that they can, but they are impacting our ability to live as free Americans. They're undermining it whether or not they realize that they are. So we pay attention to both the news media, world of policy, and the Hollywood entertainment media, because both forms impact our culture so hugely. So one of the things, for example, Bob alluded to that we do through the foundation is not only provide grant dollars to key conservative organizations, but we also design and install broadcast studios. So in-house organizations you'd know, and Bill and I are going to try not to name any names today because we don't want you to think we're endorsing anybody in particular. But our foundation, using our expertise in media, we will come in and design and prepare a space and install an in-house broadcast facility, and then periodically we will update and expand those capabilities as the organization grows and they get better at doing it. So they can utilize media to best effect, so they can message conservatism to the country as a whole. The initial cost to do this varies. It just depends on the preparation of the space and the equipment that we put in. But the payback is just enormous in terms of affecting the culture. So our studios most of them can link up to the major networks. And when we link up, and when a key conservative organization has a link-up studio like this, they can take media interviews without going anywhere, so they can do a lot of them, and it makes them attractive to the networks. Just one studio alone that we've had in place about 10 years, just last year alone, realized a publicity value of $44 million. That's what it would have cost them had they bought what they were able to gain in securing these bookings for network interviews. And on the interviews, we also provide media training for them so they are able to message the conservative point of view very well through the networks to people. So that those same studios will be used to broadcast radio programs, and then we'll help. We bring expertise to these organizations. You can too. You can think about how you might do that to C3s. For us, any way we can bring media expertise to them. Same stuff I was doing for Pepsi-Cola that I do with Lindsey Communications. I pivot right on over to the C3s, and we train them to message. We train them to operate the studios. We help them build up their in-house communications teams so they're trained. Any way we can think of it, we shape up radio program just to get the message out there, because that's what we know how to do. We're a one-trick pony. That's all we know. So that's what we bring. And we think it has really good impact. We've learned over the years of running the foundation, I've learned that one question really pulls out of a C3 their best thinking, because you guys, sometimes they get caught up in day-to-day budget woes, and they just can't break out of that into big thinking. So we'll say, what's on your wish list? What if you had money would you do? What would move you to the head of the line in terms of your effectiveness to message the ideas and beliefs of conservatism and American freedoms very, very well to people? And then we start brainstorming what that would be. And then when we fund it, we negotiate how that's going to go, what we're going to fund, and then we provide the grant dollars, and then we pretty much leave them to implement it. We check in with them, we do media audits and so forth, but we basically just bring them what we know how to do to help them, but that's just us. So I would ask you, what do you know how to do? What's your expertise? I mean, I've talked to a lot of you, your real estate people, your manufacturing moguls, your aircraft moguls. I've belonged to CNP for a long time, and I have never seen so much talent the last few years as I have seen in CNP now with the increased numbers of business people here. It's amazing. But you have so much potential and so much to offer. So today our panel wants you to think how you might do that. We really look, when we're eyeballing an organization, we really look at the ROI. And we measure the return in terms of how effective they are in impacting the culture. It's all about people. Once we give that money, that's gone. I don't mean that. I mean, we want to know that what this C3 is doing, that we're coming alongside, is really going to have a huge impact. And then can they sustain it? So if we put it in place, like for example, we will provide dollars to place a radio program perhaps on a network. We want to know that when that profile raises, maybe those dollars we put out first year or two, they're going to be able to get back in because their profile's up, people know about them, and their support goes up. So we're looking for ROI, we're looking for sustainability, amid other things. Now, sometimes this happens quick. That's the nice thing about a privately funded foundation. You've got money there, it's set aside. You can be fast. So I heard a speaker at CNP, and this is one thing you can do. I sort of shop while I sit there and listen to the speakers. And I heard this guy speak about a year and a half ago. And what he does, I thought, was great untapped potential. He's aware that the media is really pulling our corporations, our publicly traded ones, to the left. He's a former SEC attorney. He knows how this works, and so he files shareholder resolutions, which they will negotiate to have him withdraw, or he will show up or show up at the stockholder meetings if he has a stock position. Now, he has to take that stock position, so I thought, we own stock. So I called him. I said, can you train me to do what you're doing? And what stocks are you looking at? What companies are offenders? What companies are leaning left and need that pull to the right? He had a list, and it was just better for us to make a foundation grant, and he got 20 stock positions. Now, he has to hold them for a year, and then he can start showing up at these stockholder meetings. Okay, I've shared contacts with him, ideas with him. We have 2 other ideas in the pipeline to help corporations to redress that imbalance to the right. Again, I just happen to know something about stock, happen to have some, but that's just my way. I'm just saying you guys are going to have your own ways. Another quick thing we've been able to do to pivot really fast is last November. I'm a Californian, so you can feel sorry for me. Do you know what my taxes are? So we thought it would be good to address the election in California. And as you can see, these are our counties. California is massive, but it's a bellwether state. But look how big it is. So the election taught us it's broken up and the churches aren't networking. Could we apply what we know about media to that and float the idea to a policy organization in California, which we've done? And we will fund a division in there, and they'll do nothing but try and network the churches. So this is super quick, right? We can do that fast. But let me tell you, don't worry if your return's not tangible right away. Sometimes you can measure it like the $44 million publicity value in that one studio. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's slow. We work with C3 policy organizations, but we also work in Hollywood because it's a mission field, right? We have funded media ministries there for a number of years that are relational. We don't fund anybody that takes an adversarial approach. It just doesn't work. With them, they're a mission field right there. They're a wounded group. And then about 20 years ago, I walked into a Christian university. We don't have many left. There's this one solid Christian university left in California. And I looked at this tiny film department that they had in this old junior high that they bought next to the campus. They didn't have much in there, but I thought, okay, now this is really tempting. What if this, because they're close to Hollywood, and they do have a film department, so we know they want to do it. What if we built this up to a film school? What if it was a state-of-the-art, toe-to-toe with USC, Film school. Could we do it? Well, sure. I know something about broadcast studios. Did I know anything about a film school? No. Here's what I did. The last 20 years, I have crawled all over film schools, the best ones, including USC, and advocated for it. This university decided that they would okay an actual school on the campus. And so 20 years later, this is what I'm telling you, it sometimes goes really, really slow. We made a hire of a Disney former Imagineer and the top architect in Hollywood. And here we are. It's going to break ground next year. 56,500 square foot Christian film school. Thank you. Thank you. My dream was for the industry to take notice. 20 years, you guys. And they did. So Variety has this best of list, best of film schools. Last year we made it. This Christian film school is now considered by Variety magazine one of the top in the country. Can you imagine? Our film school will go up to 1,000 students at any one time. The theology at this school is solid. Can you imagine these technically brilliantly trained Christian, able to infuse story with faith, coming into an industry that's wounded? This is what tempted me so much, but it's a long, long time. So I just want you to know you have to have patience sometimes too. These are my strategies. I hit 10 of them. I don't know if you caught them going through. But consider a foundation, pick a focus. It's not just about money, it's your skills. And if you're a C3 also, you guys have stuff to share. We network, we share our people. How many ways can your particular expertise be offered? If it's not the wish list question, what questions do you find work for you? Identify great potential and tap it. Figure out who can produce great impact for the culture and make sure it can be sustained. Pay attention to speakers and news articles with a strategist's eye. Can I help them? And then don't be afraid ever to propose a worthwhile idea of your own to an organization. They'll be happy that you did. Okay, those are just my strategies. I thank you very much, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bill Walton. Thank you.
Gosh, I wish I were 1/10 as systematic as Joan. That's very impressive. She asked me to share my story of giving, and it's a personal story, and I'm not sure how replicable it is in total, but parts of it are. As I prepared for the panel, I realized my strategy for singling out who I want to invest in more or less boils down to know who you're giving to and what they're doing with the money, and does it really advance a cause that matters to you? And if you keep those things in mind, you can sift your way through a lot of the minefields. It's a question of which organizations, how much money you give to each organization, and for how long. I mean, sometimes you invest in something for a bit and then move on to something else. Others are long term. My strategy has been very personal in the sense that I like to get to know the people personally that I'm giving to, and the way I've been doing that is through CNP. And some other organizations I've been involved with. There are other. I can make a plug here for those of you who are looking for ways to organize your charity. Joan has a foundation. I use Donors Trust. Donors Trust, I believe they're a member of CNP, and they're a donor-advised organization. So you put capital with them, and then they also have a pre-identified list of hundreds of very worthy center-right groups that you can give to just by simply clicking on the website and saying X amount of dollars go to them. And they're very good at doing some of the diligence that I like to do. I try to be systematic in my giving. It's sometimes hard because it is personal and you tend to give to people you like. But the questions I'm looking for in organizations are, do they have a focus? And here what I'm doing is I'm bringing into my training as a venture capitalist and private equity investor and banker, and the same metrics and the same way to think about a profitable business or a 501c3 or C4 is to think about how effective they are in bringing about outcomes. So you look for focus, you look for proven outcomes. For me, I look for critical mass and scale. I mean, in this country, we have more than 1.5 million charities competing for $410 billion of charitable dollars. And so the landscape is littered with lots of organizations which you may love their stated mission, but they may not have the resources to actually bring about what we all want to see happen. So one of my thoughts is to think about that. Now, I also, as many of you know, have been very active, not just in writing checks, but as a political activist myself, and I serve on a lot of boards. I serve on the Heritage Board, the Media Research Center Board for America. I'm also on the American Conservative Union Board, and I get to know a lot of the people and those, and are able to sort through a little bit how to matter in what we're doing. One of the issues we have on our side that the other side does not is that we tend to, every time we get a good idea, we start our own foundation, we start our own organization, and we're highly fragmented in that way. And the other thing that tends to happen is that we don't coordinate or even sorry, Chad, the Republican Party, because there's so many of us, and I guess I'm in that camp. You say, well, look, I'm a conservative, but I'm not a Republican. And the left doesn't look at it that way. I mean, there's really not a shred of difference between the Democrat Party and all the organizations they fund. And the other thing we don't do is we don't share lists. If you think about it, everybody jealously guards their donor list, and the left does not. They share that list. You saw the slide that Cleta showed us. They've got, 54 501c3s in Florida that are coordinating both the fundraising and the activist thing. Now, I'm not suggesting that CNP get into that business, but it's something we need to be mindful of as we think about developing strategies for the future. The other issue that the other thing that's on my mind a lot is are we funding the past or are we funding the future? I mean, there's a tendency to look at organizations and they say, well, they've been doing this for 50 years. Okay, well, they've been doing it for 50 years, but have they solved the problem? Have they brought about change? And sometimes you can look at a legacy organization and say, well, that's a nice, safe place to put money. But really, you should be looking at smaller, more venturesome, more innovative, small organizations. And I'm coming around to the view where I used to sort of think, well, I give a big check to a big organization and a small check to a little organization. I think we ought to be thinking about it in exactly the opposite way, where if you find somebody who's got a really terrific idea for social change, maybe write them a big check and maybe give the big organization a smaller check because they're so much more able to use that money. The other thing that I look for, and I didn't mention on my list of companies to fund, is just how efficient is the donor money being used? Is an organization spending 50, 60% of that money to raise money, or is it actually going to the things that you want to support? And so I would caution that's something when you're doing your diligence on funding that you put in your considerations. I've had a lot of fun, though, in this world. I've started a webcast a couple of years ago, and one of the things I've learned in my webcast is you can get really interesting people on the show like Dave Namo. And they lead you they explain what their organizations are doing, and you say, well, gee, this is something that, I want to be more involved with. I had Reggie Littlejohn on a couple of weeks ago talking about human rights in China, and we're going to hear about China this afternoon, but everybody in this room ought to be concerned about where China's going and what their plans are for us. Anyway, talking with Reggie led me to women's rights without borders. Talked with J.P. DeGance, who has Communio, who's working on saving marriages and lowering divorce rates in key cities with a very innovative, almost franchise concept where they take something that works in one city and replicates it in the other. And it's pretty exciting. Jonathan Williams led me to the American Legislative Exchange Council, and they're doing tremendous work in terms of what good things are happening in states on economic policy and what catastrophe things are being done in states. Pick Connecticut or the state of Washington as a great example. trying to get through the. I've been a little busy this week. It's been a sort of a it's been sort of a changed week, and as I was moaning to Joan, I didn't do my usual preparation because I've had a couple other things on my mind. And by the way, I'm delighted with the outcome of this week and delighted to be serving this organization with all these terrific people. And one thing I would want to stress is people think of me as an economic conservative. I'm not. I'm a full-blown fusion conservative. My issues are the social issues, the national defense issues, and the economic issues. We have to work on all those issues as an organization, and that's the exciting thing. We can do it all together. And that's, Joan, that's it of my prepared remarks. I'll take a couple questions. Chad?
Okay, we're going to double team you.
Okay.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, so Bill thinks fast on his feet, he tells me. So would we ask him questions? And we said, you betcha. And I said, okay, what kind of questions? Like, can you name all of Santa's reindeer?
One of the things I've learned as a CEO is I've learned to delegate. Chad, would you handle that question?
Okay.
Was that quick enough?
Okay, no, you're off the hook. You don't need, I don't know. Okay, so I know you've got a sequential, orderly mind, and you're looking at an organization, you're looking at outcomes, and I really respect that sequence, and you're a banker. So you mentioned you're really red flagged when an organization spends too much on fundraising. I'd be interested to know, because I think even the C3s in here, as well as business people in here, want to know what they're doing wrong, what they should look for. So what else do you look for, say, in a C3's financials that would red flag you about them?
Well, I don't get into the financials as much as I just ask questions. And the questions I ask are how much money you're spending on fundraising compared to how much you're spending on your mission. One thing I failed to admit that is really critical is I spend a lot of time thinking and looking and assessing the CEO. Because my view is that in business and in nonprofits, the most essential element is an effective CEO, mission-driven, committed, able to build a team, able to raise money, able to do really all the things that need to be done. And you know, sometimes I'll find a CEO who's very good at selling, but very bad at running something. And so you got to be careful not to be lured by charm and instead look for actual organizational effectiveness in building, or at least if a person's good at selling, they ought to be able to have somebody behind them who's good at running things to make the trains run on time in the organization.
Okay.
You know, I like your idea of the webcast. It's pretty unique and cutting edge. How are you brainstorming ideas for the things you're covering?
Well, it's systematic in the sense that I have issues I care about. I mean, I care about human flourishing is kind of the big $5 word. I care about, you know, the political activists, economic freedom, religious freedom, life. So there's a subset of the world where I can get into issues on the webcast where I can deal with those things. More recently, last year or so, I've been focusing on China. I've had like 6 shows on China. And I got, I don't know when, about 2 years ago, it came on my radar screen. And now I think a big chunk of what I'm doing is alerting people to what's going on in China, which we're going to see in the panel. But it's run by the Communist Party, total control, 80 million people in a country of 1.4 billion. They have 27 million facial recognition cameras. They have a system of social credits so they can keep track of what everybody's doing. As atheists, they're actually trying to wipe out the Muslims in Western. I guess not exactly. I'm not exactly sure where the region is in China, but it's an issue. They've got the one-child policy, which has led to incredible human rights abuses and women's rights abuses, and they have plans. They're all over the world. They have Confucius Institutes here in the United States, and they're basically propaganda arms for China. They're doing a lot of surveilling here now. I wouldn't be surprised if they're surveilling this meeting. So,
Would you just talk about Costco. That's what you saw there.
No, but it's, I don't want to alarm us, but it is, but so how do I come up with the story? I think about what the really critical issues are of the day. And unfortunately, I know a lot of people who are smart about that, including a lot of people in this room. And so it's, I call people up and say, would you like to come on?
Awesome. I think a lot of people, members of CNP, might do well with a webcast too. That's a possibility. It's a great medium now and super popular. So what would you tell the membership if they have an idea that they might wish to start their own webcast? How did you get that started? What are the steps?
It's incredibly easy. You buy a microphone, a good one. You've got a computer. You can use apps called Zoom or Skype to get people on a video feed. You start up a YouTube channel, which is free, and all of a sudden you're a webcaster. And it's really not that hard. The biggest problem people have is they think it's hard, and it's not. It's easy. And I think if more people were doing it, we'd see that we'd get more of our voices out there, and we need more of our voices out there because the left has got the social media down pretty much. We've used it somewhat, but we could use it much more effectively.
Sure. You sit on a lot of boards. How do you choose which ones to be on, and how do you pick through that?
It's based on organizational effectiveness. Heritage, I think Brent Bozell at Media Research Center is one of the most efficient, effective single-issue organizations out there. He's been on the media bias thing for 30, 40 years, and anytime that comes up again, he's on it, and I think he's an example of an organization. Single purpose does bring about effective outcomes. Okay, I'm going to exercise my prerogative here, and as president, first time I've done something like that. And Chad, I think I want to hear about you and political fundraising.
Yes, sir.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Bill's picking at me about the party. I guess that's inevitable when you've been a state party chairman and you work for the RNC. One of my first pastor meetings I did in Arkansas. This pastor comes up to me and said, Chad, I love what you got to say, and I'm glad you're going to do pastor engagement. I don't trust the party. I said, Pastor, I've been a state party chairman. Now I work for Reince Priebus. I don't either. And so we're all in the same boat. I may cut on the party a little bit in my remarks, but I want to be forthcoming about stuff and maybe give a perspective of outsider look. I've been both inside the party, behind the curtain, and outside the party. I'm pitch hitting for Reince. Reince is one of the people I really look up to. I think he's probably been one of the greatest chairmen we've had. Certainly one of the most conservative chairmen the RNC's ever had. And unless one of us runs, it will never have a more conservative chairman. He just became a Gold Circle member too, by the way. So I'm honored to pinch hit for him. And he really believes in our mission. So it was good to talk to him. And I got to tell you, this is one of the more weedy topics that we could have. I don't want to get into too much of the weeds and run us off track. There are so many people in here that probably know so much more about this topic. But there are a lot of us, when I run around and I have a C3, so I've certainly raised C3 money. I've raised C4 and Super PAC money, and I've obviously run and raised the hard dollars for the party. So I've done a little bit of all those things. I'm not sure Reince has done that, but when I talk to people about these things, people look at you with that, oh yeah, I understand all this. And it's the thing we all nod about in understanding, but everybody's really thinking, I wish somebody would lay this out a little bit better, because it is just about as clear as mud. And I don't want to get into too much detail with you, but I want to give you some bullet points to take away from this. The opposition is very good at this. They're very good. I spoke last time about the group Act Blue. They do have a consolidated place, a one-stop shop that has been very, very effective in raising a lot of dollars. If their capacity really is about $3 billion next cycle, and again, it's the most important election in our lifetimes, once again, if they're really at $3 billion, then we've got a lot of work to do, and it's very important that we grasp these details. So I'm going to start this PowerPoint, guys. If we are on for the PowerPoint back there, I went too far. Tapping the rights resources. I want to go over just the main topics here. We're going to talk about hard money versus soft money. What's the difference? If you understand the flow of money, you're going to understand what's going on behind the scenes. Donors, organizations really need to prioritize what's being done, why it's important, and why you're funding that. And I want to talk about the line you cannot cross. Well, of course, that'll talk about party versus outside money, coordination and non-coordination. But here are the realities that I'll end up wrapping up with. There are about 36 electoral votes to play with in the election. Donald Trump won Michigan by 12,000 votes. That's 16 electoral votes. Pennsylvania's 20 and Wisconsin's 10. Maybe other options are New Hampshire, Minnesota, Virginia, but who knows? So we'll talk about that. But there's not a lot of room to play with. The line in the middle you see is the line you cannot cross. My attorneys at both the state and the federal level spent an enormous amount of time. So there's a lot of attorneys in here. You guys could pitch in on this and talk about it. So the hard money is the campaign committees. That's the RNC. It's personal dollars. It's the NRCC, the Congressional Committee, the Senatorial Committee, the candidates funding themselves. All the money and all the use is interchangeable. They can spend it any way they want to. They're the only entities that can actually coordinate with the campaign on messaging and marketing and the ways that they reach out to the voter. Think of it like type O blood. It's universal in use, but it's limited in supply. We called it gold. You know, you got X dollars in gold in federal funding. You got all this state funding dollars that can come from other places like corporations, businesses, other entities. This is the reason that we cannot dismiss the role of the party. You know, they're the ones who are going to run in and give X number of dollars in a key state right at the end. And they're going to put in the dollars in the places that the candidate specifically needs it. It's the main method of getting the coordinated cash into the campaign. Now, donors are disclosed. I'll talk a little bit later about, you know, just a tolerance for your disclosure level. You know, how do you feel about having your stuff out there so other folks call you and let you know that they want to give? Soft money's outside spending. You'll hear that term used quite a bit. It's an unlimited supply. There are no limits on that. People can write really big checks, but it's restricted in use, and it can never, that organization can never take the product they produce over to the candidate. That's a big deal, because that means a lot of our organizations could possibly tend to spend money on things that might not matter. Now, when you win a campaign, everything matters, right? Every little piece was a big part of this. Every part of it had a part to play. But if you lose, you start looking at, you know, a little bit of the nitty gritty and going, boy, I wish we'd have known this. Think about it. Let's suppose we identify 10,000 pro-gun voters in Pennsylvania. But we do it through our other entities like a 4, Super PAC, C3, whatever, however we're doing this for our purposes. We can't let the campaign know that. We've identified key voters. We know they want to go our way. It's like what I do with pastors now with my C3. We can't give that to the campaign when they need it the most. So we got to figure out how to do that. Bring that slide back up. There you go. Some groups have to disclose the donors, others don't. We can talk about that too. But they cannot spend the money on all the activities, and they may not focus on what really helps. What's dark money? This is the big phrase. Of course, there's no such thing as dark money now on the left, right? They can spend it any kind of way. Cleta Mitchell just did a great job talking about how the left organizes their C3s against us to do things that do really matter. But it's political spending that's meant to influence voters where money is not disclosed and sources are not known. If you read in the media, you would think that only the right has dark money. Everything the left does is fine. It's got a great purpose to it, and they've got the right heart and motive, but all of ours is dark money. So political nonprofits and some super PACs fall into the dark money category. And then go into the super PAC. These are called independent expenditure only organizations. So look at the pros and cons. Some of y'all, and I'm sure the CNP staff will make this available to you. And I did. I tried hard just to tighten this up and make it as streamlined as possible because it can get so miscombobulated. They can raise unlimited money. They can spend unlimited money advocating for or against candidates, and they can raise the money from all sorts of sources. So there's Congressional Leadership Fund. This is the We're Going to Take the House Back Super PAC, things like that. The Club for Growth Action, Senate Leadership Fund. There are others in here, of course. The cons, and of course, these aren't necessarily cons. They're just a different way of looking at it. It's restricted in use. I'm going to repeat this. Can't take that product that they produce over to the candidate, and they can't give money to the candidate. They got to report their donors, and they tend to spend more money in prep work. Things like voter ID, data, things that they can't coordinate and they can't transfer over to the state party or the national party or even the candidate. And they can't spend all their money on the activities that they need, and they may not spend the money on what's really needed by that particular candidate. Campaigns are not cookie cutter. I've run campaigns now all over the country, and they are not a cookie cutter enterprise. Everyone's very particular and specific, and the consultants come in and try to spend money the same way in South Carolina they do in Virginia. They're probably going to lose the race. They're not thinking about the nitty-gritty. I think that's one of the fallacies of the party, is too many consultants and too many party folks, Charlie and I would agree on this, kind of come in and think this is the way it is, and it worked for me in Nevada, so it's going to work here in South Carolina, and that's just not true. Go on to, I'll hit this thing too fast, C4 organizations. Political nonprofits. A lot of people will call these the social welfare organizations. That means they've got a purpose to what they're doing. They can't do political purpose things. They can't spend more than like 49.9%. They've got a limit to what they can do. But they can spend that IE money specifically for an organization or a candidate, and they can engage in those political activities as long as they're defined not to be the primary purpose of the organization. Now, that's good because they can take unlimited donations. The public disclosure is not required, and it is a great tool when well directed. Looking around the room, there are people in here who've done this very thing. The Chamber of Commerce has one. Americans for Prosperity, the NRA Institute for Legislative Action, Marjorie's group, Susan B. Anthony List, and I can go on and on and on. They're just ones I picked off the website when I looked at it. These have great potential and are enormously effective tools when they're well directed and put in the right direction for the candidate or for the purpose. The cons, they're restricted in use. Again, they can't always take that product to the candidate. They tend to spend more money in the things that may not matter, and they can't spend enough on all the activities that possibly can help. And this is just kind of an overview on, well, I missed C3. This thing is very quick. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. There we go. They're non-deductible. The C3 organization, the pros, it's educational, religious, charitable organizations not doing political activity. They operate without incurring the tax liability. Here's the benefit, and this is what Cleta was talking about. They could mask the true nature of a highly political organization through non-disclosure. They can be doing things. The left has been the master at this forever. They're very, very good at this, and we've shied away and been probably more careful. They take donations from individuals and corporations that may not want their stockholders or their employees to know that we're in what they're investing in. It's another benefit of the C3. And they disclose the financial activity long after it's taken place. They may take a stand on a controversial topic, and they may not want the donors to know what they're doing or the stockholders know what they're doing, rather, and so this is a benefit of them. Again, can't donate directly to or coordinate with the candidates or the campaign, and they spend an awful lot of time and money doing things that may not actually benefit a candidate. So you got to be really careful. We were talking about this coming in, and I think one of the main things of this entire discussion is if you're a donor, you're an activist, you're running one of these organizations, think about what really benefits in the long run. Cleta was saying everybody ought to do voter registration. I'll join that train. We know that helps, and I'll tell you why we know that helps. Because once voter registration's been done, those names go into the state election records. Then that's accessible for the campaign, the candidate. They know who those people are. So if you're not doing anything else, make sure you're helping to sponsor and run voter registration drives everywhere you possibly can. You'll never go wrong doing that. She said in the previous session, and I totally agree with her, I've been all over the country talking to pastors and asking them, how many of your people are registered to vote? Oh yeah, all of them, most of them, pretty much all of them. And they're just wrong. And if you'll just get them to do that effort and do a voter registration in their church, I've got a table, I'm going to bring the forms, I'll stand back there and I'll be the nice person to say, fill this in. It's nonpartisan. You're not for a candidate. You're not for a party. You're just getting them to involve themselves and engage in the political activity by voting and being a part of this. As a Christian, I believe Matthew 5 and being salt and light is imperative. It's really hard to be salty salt if you're still in the shaker. And you can't be light if you're hid somewhere. And so if you look at that scripture, it says, if you're not going to be salt and light, you're good for nothing, to be trodden under the feet of men. I don't want to stand before the Father and be trodden in front of the feet of men because I was good for nothing. So we need to get people in our churches, our organizations, every group you have a sphere of influence with, to do voter registration and make sure they're part of that. That becomes part of the public record, and even Paul Teller can access it back there for the campaign because it is in the public record once that happens. So C3s have a valuable place. Y'all, a lot of y'all know them, of course, because you run those. The C4s, this is a social welfare organization. We already went through this because I skipped it. And then wrapping up, and again, I can only talk about this stuff for probably about 6 or 8 hours. But this is where I think I want to bring it to a point, because it is weedy. It is clear as mud. One of my attorneys told me when I became chair, he said, campaign finance laws are written so that innocent people are going to be guilty. You know, it's just so hard to follow through in all the laws and the rules. But this is why you cannot ignore the power of the party. Don't forget, they're the ones that can coordinate. As much as any organization, Super PAC, C4, they can have $1 billion. But when it comes down to turning out that last few thousand votes in Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin or Ohio or Florida, they can't get that money at the last minute to the campaign. So keep that in mind when you're writing checks, when you're raising money, when people in your sphere of influence are asking you, who should I give to? What should I support? Do not discount the power of the party and the coordination they can do. Here's the other thing. Don't forget, the party may have a different agenda than you do. They may not support the same candidates that we want to support as Christian conservatives. You ought to keep that in mind. I've been on the inside. I'm just telling you, don't expect all of them to support the kind of candidates that you may want to support. So that is why other entities play a very valuable, a strategic, but a limited role. Your involvement, personally, your organization, your activism, it may just depend on that part about your personal disclosure tolerance. You know, how much do you want your stuff out there? Because somebody's going to call you. We're talking about who calls you and who's never called you. Once you're on those lists, you're probably going to get a phone call from somebody else that says, hey, how about this? Keep this in mind as I wrap up. 36 electoral votes to play with. We've got to think about this for 2020. We love what's going on in our country, and we shudder thinking about the types of evil that are going on and the undermining of the American culture, the very basis of our success. Only won Michigan by 12,000 votes. Every vote matters. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. When you look at the other options, they don't look as healthy for us possibly. So think about what you give to, where you put your time, because it really matters. If you want to talk about this more, you can email me, chad@chadconnelly.com. That's my cell phone. And thank y'all so much for letting me be a part of this. God bless you.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. I hope you now have some ideas for strategies to ignite your own, some information so that you are now skilled, armed, knowledgeable tacticians. I hope this isn't the last time we do something like this. But let me just leave you with this. All of these things are fueled because we do things differently than the left. Chad's talked about some of the things they engage in. I wouldn't look too much. Don't worry about it. They go a little shady, maybe. That's not the way we do it, right? Because we've got something they don't have. The best strategist of all, right? The Holy Spirit's on our side. We're going to do it right. Everybody always asks, what can I do? And the answer is whatever you can think to do. Trust yourself that the Holy Spirit's going to put an interest or a spark of something that you can't get out of your mind. That is yours. Own it. Act on it. We hope you've given you some tools and ideas how to do just that. And I know that this team here at CNP has great untapped potential. And your strategies, we hope now, are truly ignited. Thank you so much for coming. You guys, your action sessions, I think, are about to start very shortly. So we hope lunch was good. You'll have a little time for a comfort break. And we thank you.